The white lace of Catherine Morgan's wedding dress billowed behind her like a sail as she ran through the dusty streets of Santa Fe, New Mexico territory, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her rib cage. It was June 1878, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the adobe buildings lining the plaza. Catherine's carefully pinned hair was already coming loose, dark curls escaping to frame her flushed face as she hitched up her skirts and ran faster. Behind her, she could hear the confused shouts from the church, her father's bellowing voice rising above the rest. She had done it. She had actually left him standing there at the altar, that sneering banker's son from Boston who her father had sold her to like a prize mare. Her eyes scanned the street desperately. She needed a horse, needed to get far away before they caught up with her. That was when she saw him. A tall cowboy in dusty trail clothes leading a magnificent chestnut mare toward the hitching post outside the saloon. He was probably in his mid-20s with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. But it was not him she focused on. It was the horse. Catherine did not hesitate. She ran straight for the mare, gathering her ridiculous skirts in both hands. The cowboy turned at the sound of her approach, his green eyes widening in surprise as this vision in white came barreling toward him. "I need your horse," Catherine gasped, already reaching for the saddle horn. The cowboy's hand caught her wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough to stop her. "Ma'am, I think you might want to explain what is happening here." "There is no time," Catherine said, her brown eyes pleading. "Please, I will pay you back, I promise, but I need to leave right now." He studied her face for a long moment, taking in the wedding dress, the desperation in her eyes, the way she kept glancing over her shoulder. Then, to her complete shock, he released her wrist and laced his fingers together to form a stirrup. "Up you go," he said simply. Catherine stared at him. "You are letting me take your horse?" "I am letting you borrow her," he corrected, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "But I am coming with you. That dress is going to attract attention for miles, and you look like you have never ridden astride in your life." He was right on both counts. Catherine had only ever ridden side saddle, and even that infrequently, but she did not argue. She put her foot in his linked hands and let him boost her up into the saddle, then watched in amazement as he swung up behind her in one fluid motion. "Hold on, he said, his arm coming around her waist to grab the reins. "What is your name?" "Catherine Morgan," she said breathlessly. "Well, Catherine Morgan, I am Jack Sullivan, and we are about to ride like the devil himself is chasing us." He was true to his word. Jack spurred the mare into motion just as Catherine's father and several other men burst out of the church. The horse leaped forward, and Catherine felt Jack's arm tighten around her waist, holding her secure as they thundered down the street and out of Santa Fe. They rode hard for nearly an hour, the mare's powerful legs eating up the miles of desert landscape. Catherine had never experienced anything like it. The wind whipping her hair back, the heat of the sun, the solid warmth of Jack behind her, his chest pressed against her back as he guided the horse with practiced ease. Despite everything, despite the fear and uncertainty, she felt more alive than she had in years. Finally, Jack slowed the mare to a walk as they entered a small canyon where a creek ran between red rock walls. He dismounted first, then helped Catherine down. Her legs were shaking, both from the adrenaline and from the unfamiliar position of riding astride. "You did good," Jack said, leading the mare to the water. "Most women in a fancy dress like that would have fallen off in the first mile." Catherine looked down at her ruined gown. The hem was filthy, the delicate lace torn in several places. "It is not exactly practical traveling attire." "No, it is not," Jack agreed. He pulled a canteen from his saddle and offered it to her. "You want to tell me what happened back there?" Catherine took a long drink of water before answering. Now that the immediate danger had passed, the reality of what she had done was starting to sink in. "My father arranged a marriage for me, to a man named Edmund Whitmore. He is from Boston, came out here to open a bank. My father owns the largest ranch in the territory, and he saw it as a good business arrangement. And you did not agree? I met Edmund 3 times before today, Catherine said, her voice tight. Each time, he made it very clear that he expected a decorative, obedient wife who would manage his household and give him sons. He spoke to me like I was a child, or worse, like I was a piece of furniture he was purchasing. Jack's jaw tightened. And your father supported this? My father thinks women are good for 2 things, producing heirs and sealing business deals, preferably both at once. Catherine sat down on a rock, suddenly exhausted. I know I just ruined my reputation. I know everyone in Santa Fe will be talking about this, but I could not do it. Jack? I could not promise to love and obey a man I did not even respect, let alone care for. Good, Jack said firmly. A woman should not have to marry a man she does not want. Catherine looked up at him, surprised by the conviction in his voice. Most men would not agree with you. Most men are fools. Jack crouched down beside the creek, refilling his canteen. So what is your plan now? Catherine laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. I do not have one. I just knew I had to get away. I have an aunt in Denver, my mother's sister. She never married, runs a boarding house. My father always spoke of her with disdain, which probably means she is a wonderful person. I thought perhaps I could go to her. Jack was quiet for a moment, studying the water. Then he said, Denver is about 400 miles north. That is a long ride for someone in a wedding dress with no supplies. Catherine's heart sank. I know, I told you, I did not think this through. I just ran. I did not say I would not help you, Jack said, turning to look at her. I am just pointing out that we need to do this smart. Your father is going to be looking for you, and he has got money and influence. We need to keep you out of sight until we are well away from Santa Fe. We? Catherine repeated. Jack, you do not owe me anything. You already helped me escape. I cannot ask you to ride all the way to Denver. You are not asking, Jack said simply. I am offering. Besides, I was heading north anyway. I have been working ranches down here for the past 2 years, saving up money. Was planning to buy some land up in Colorado, start my own spread. Denver is right on the way. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. Why are you being so kind to me? You do not even know me. Jack smiled, a real smile this time that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Maybe I have got a weakness for women brave enough to run away from their own weddings. Or maybe I just do not like bullies. And a man who would force his daughter into a marriage he does not want is a bully in my book. They rested for another hour, letting the mare drink her fill and graze on the sparse grass growing along the creek. Jack explained that they would need to avoid the main trails and towns for the first few days, at least until they were far enough from Santa Fe that Catherine's father's reach would not extend. He had some supplies in his saddlebags, enough to get them through a couple of days if they were careful. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the red rocks in shades of orange and gold, Jack helped Catherine back onto the mare. This time, she was more prepared for the feeling of his arm around her waist, but that did not stop the flutter in her stomach when his hand settled against her ribs. They rode through the evening, following the creek north as the stars began to appear overhead. Catherine had never been out in the wilderness like this, with nothing between her and the vast sky. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. You cold? Jack asked after a while. The temperature was dropping quickly now that the sun had set. A little, Catherine admitted. The thin fabric of her wedding dress had not been designed for desert nights. Jack reached back with one hand and pulled a blanket from his bedroll, draping it around her shoulders. The gesture was so casual, so natural, that Catherine felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the blanket spread through her chest. Thank you, she said softly. We will make camp soon, Jack promised. There is a spot about another mile up where the canyon widens. We will be sheltered from the wind there. True to his word, they soon reached a natural alcove in the canyon wall, where the rock curved inward, creating a protected space. Jack helped Catherine down, then set about unsaddling the mare and gathering wood for a fire. Catherine watched, feeling useless in her elaborate dress. Is there anything I can do to help? She asked. Jack glanced over at her, taking in the impractical gown. You know how to start a fire? No, Catherine admitted. My father made sure I learned all the proper accomplishments for a lady. Embroidery, piano, watercolors, nothing particularly useful for survival in the wilderness. Well, you're about to get an education, Jack said, not unkindly. He showed her how to arrange the kindling, how to strike the flint, how to feed the flames without smothering them. Catherine's first several attempts failed, but Jack was patient, and eventually she got a small fire going. There, Jack said, genuine approval in his voice. You're already more capable than you think. They shared a simple meal of jerky and hardtack from Jack's supplies, washed down with creek water. It was the plainest food Catherine had ever eaten, and somehow it tasted better than any of the elaborate dinners she had endured at her father's table. Can I ask you something? Catherine said as they sat by the fire, the mare dozing nearby. Sure. Why were you in Santa Fe today? You said you were heading north. I was collecting my pay from the ranch I've been working, Jack explained. The owner owed me for 3 months of work. I got into town this morning, got my money, and was planning to leave this afternoon. Then I stopped for a drink, and a woman in a wedding dress tried to steal my horse. Catherine felt herself blush. I would have returned her. Eventually. I know, Jack said, and there was something in his voice that made Catherine look at him. In the firelight, his features seemed softer, more open. I saw it in your eyes. You are not a thief, Catherine. You are just desperate. I was, Catherine said quietly. I am. My whole life has been planned out for me since I was born. What I would wear, what I would study, who I would marry. Today was supposed to be the final piece falling into place, the end of Catherine Morgan and the beginning of Mrs. Edmund Whitmore. I think that is what scared me most, not Edmund himself, but the idea of losing myself completely. Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, My parents died when I was 16. Cholera took them both within a week of each other. I had 3 younger sisters, and suddenly I was responsible for all of them. I was so scared, Catherine. I did not know how to take care of myself, let alone 3 girls. But I learned. I worked whatever jobs I could find, kept us fed and housed. Eventually, my sisters all married good men they chose themselves. And then I was free to figure out who Jack Sullivan was, what he wanted from life. What do you want? Catherine asked. Land, Jack said simply. A place that is mine, where I can build something that lasts. I have been drifting from ranch to ranch for years now, working for other men, living by their rules. I want to make my own rules for a change. Catherine understood that feeling more than she could express. I think that is a good dream. What about you? Jack asked, and what does Catherine Morgan want now that she does not have to be Mrs. Edmund Whitmore? Catherine had to think about that. No one had ever asked her what she wanted before. I want to be useful, she said finally. I want to do something that matters, not just sit in a parlor doing embroidery. My aunt writes letters sometimes, though my father usually intercepts them. She told me once that she started her boarding house because she wanted to help people, give them a safe place when they were passing through a strange city. That sounds like something worth doing. It does, Jack agreed. He stood up, brushing off his pants. We should get some sleep. I want to be moving again before dawn. He gave Catherine the blanket and used his saddle as a pillow, lying down on the opposite side of the fire. Catherine wrapped herself in the blanket, using a smooth rock as a makeshift pillow. It was uncomfortable, nothing like her feather bed back home, but she found herself drifting off quickly, lulled by the crackling fire and the knowledge that she was, for the first time in her life, exactly where she chose to be. She woke to Jack gently shaking her shoulder. The stars were still out, though the eastern horizon was starting to lighten. Sorry, Jack said quietly, but we need to move. I want to cover as much ground as possible before it gets too hot. Catherine sat up, every muscle in her body protesting. Apparently, riding astride used completely different muscles than side saddle. Jack seemed to notice her wincing. You're going to be sore for a few days, he said sympathetically. Your body will adjust." They rode through the morning, following narrow trails that Jack seemed to know by instinct. Catherine wondered how many miles he had traveled in his life, how many sunrises he had seen from the back of a horse. Around midday they came upon a small settlement, barely more than a trading post and a few scattered buildings. "Stay here," Jack said, helping Catherine down in a copse of cottonwoods outside the settlement. "Keep out of sight. I am going to see if I can buy you some proper traveling clothes." Catherine wanted to protest, but she knew he was right. Her wedding dress was like a beacon, announcing her presence to anyone who saw her. She waited nervously in the shade while Jack rode into the settlement. He returned an hour later with a bundle under his arm. "The trading post owner's wife had some things she was willing to part with," he explained. "They are not fancy, but they will be a lot more practical than that dress." Catherine took the bundle behind some rocks to change. There was a simple cotton blouse, a split riding skirt, sturdy boots, and even a wide-brimmed hat. The clothes were worn but clean, and when Catherine emerged, she felt like a different person. Jack's expression when he saw her made her stomach flip. "You look like you were born to it," he said. "It feels strange," Catherine admitted, looking down at the practical clothes, "but good strange." They continued north, settling into a rhythm over the next few days. Jack taught Catherine the basics of wilderness survival, how to read the land, how to find water, which plants were edible and which were poisonous. In the evenings, they would make camp and talk, sharing stories from their vastly different lives. Catherine learned that Jack had been born in Missouri, that he loved the first light of dawn and the smell of rain on dry earth, that he could play the harmonica and had a surprisingly good singing voice. Jack learned that Catherine had taught herself to read Latin from her father's books, that she had a sharp mind for numbers, that she dreamed in color, and could identify every constellation in the night sky. With each passing day, Catherine felt the constraints of her old life falling away. Her hands became calloused from helping Jack with camp chores. Her skin turned golden from the sun. She learned to mount the horse on her own, learned to read the mare's moods and anticipate her movements, and with each passing day she became more aware of Jack, the way his hands moved with such confidence and grace, the sound of his laugh, the small kindnesses he showed without even seeming to think about them, the way he looked at her sometimes like she was something precious and strong all at once. They were about a week out from Santa Fe, camped beside a river in the foothills of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, when Catherine finally acknowledged what was happening to her heart. Jack had caught 2 fish for their dinner, and they were roasting them over the fire. The sun was setting, painting the sky in impossible shades of pink and orange. Catherine watched Jack turn the fish, his profile sharp against the colorful sky, and felt something in her chest crack open. She was falling in love with him. The realization should have terrified her. A week ago, she had been running away from marriage, from the idea of tying her life to a man's. But this was different. This was not about duty or obligation or business arrangements. This was about the way Jack made her laugh, the way he believed in her capabilities even when she doubted herself, the way he had given her freedom instead of trying to control her. "You are staring," Jack said, not looking up from the fish. Catherine felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how different my life is now than it was a week ago," Catherine said honestly. "How different I am." Jack did look up then, his green eyes meeting hers across the fire. "You are not different, Catherine. You are just finally getting to be yourself." "Maybe," Catherine said. "Or maybe I am becoming someone new, someone better." "You were always good," Jack said quietly. "You just did not know it yet." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Catherine did not have a name for. Then Jack cleared his throat and turned back to the fish. "These are done. Let us eat." That night, after they had finished eating and banked the fire, Catherine lay in her blanket and stared up at the stars. Across the glowing embers, she could see Jack's shape in the darkness. She wondered if he was awake too, if he felt the same pull that she did, As if in answer, his voice came soft through the night. "Catherine, you asleep?" "No," she whispered back. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." There was a pause. Then Jack said, "Do you regret it? Running away?" Catherine thought about her father's ranch, about the life of comfort and luxury she had left behind. Then she thought about the past week, about learning to start fires and ride horses and navigate by the stars, about the conversations with Jack that made her think and laugh and see the world differently. "No," she said firmly. "I do not regret it for a second." She heard Jack exhale, like he had been holding his breath. "Good. That is good." They crossed into Colorado territory 3 days later. The landscape was changing, becoming more mountainous, with forests of pine and aspen replacing the red rock desert. The air was cooler at the higher elevation, and Catherine was grateful for the practical clothes Jack had bought her. They were following a trail through a narrow pass when they heard voices ahead. Jack immediately pulled the mare off the path, guiding her into the cover of the trees. He pressed a finger to his lips, and Catherine nodded, her heart pounding. 3 men rode into view, and Catherine's blood turned to ice. She recognized one of them. Tom Briggs, her father's foreman. They were searching for her. "The old man is offering $500 for information leading to her return," Briggs was saying. "Says she was kidnapped, that some cowboy took her against her will." $500, one of the other men whistled. "That is more than a year's wages." "Yeah, well, Morgan is not going to rest until he gets his daughter back," Briggs said. "Got his pride hurt, having her run off like that. Plus, the Whitmore fellow is threatening to sue for breach of contract. The whole thing is a mess." They rode past without seeing Jack and Catherine hidden in the trees. Jack waited until they were well out of sight before guiding the mare back onto the trail. "We need to be more careful," he said quietly. "If your father has men searching this far north, he is serious about finding you." Catherine felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "Jack, I have put you in danger. If they catch us, my father will claim you kidnapped me. You could hang." "They are not going to catch us," Jack said firmly. "But you are right that we need to be smart. We will stick to the back trails, avoid settlements as much as possible. It is going to make the journey longer, but safer." They traveled more cautiously after that, always alert for signs of other riders. Jack taught Catherine how to cover their tracks, how to read the forest for signs of danger. She proved to be a quick learner, and Jack found himself increasingly impressed by her resourcefulness. One afternoon, they were resting beside a mountain stream when Catherine asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. "Jack, what are you going to do when we reach Denver? When you have delivered me safely to my aunt?" Jack had been wondering the same thing. The thought of leaving Catherine, of riding away and never seeing her again, sat in his stomach like a stone. But he did not know what else to do. She was running from marriage, from being forced into a life she did not want. The last thing she needed was another man trying to lay claim to her future. "I told you," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "I am going to buy land, start my ranch." "Where?" Catherine pressed. "I do not know yet. Somewhere with good grass and water, maybe up in the high country." Catherine was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What if you did not have to do it alone?" Jack's head snapped up. "What?" "I have been thinking," Catherine said, her words coming faster now, "about what you said, about wanting land of your own, and about what I said about wanting to be useful. A ranch needs more than just a rancher, Jack. It needs someone to manage the household, to keep the books, to help with 1,000 different tasks. It needs a partner." "Catherine," Jack said carefully, "what are you saying?" "I am saying that maybe I do not want to go live with my aunt," Catherine said, meeting his eyes directly. "Maybe I want something different. Maybe I want to build something with someone who sees me as an equal, not a piece of property." Jack's heart was pounding. "You barely know me. It has only been a couple of weeks." "I know that you are kind," Catherine said. "I know that you are patient and brave and that you believe in people's ability to change and grow. I know that when I am with you, I feel like I can be myself, not the person everyone expects me to be. Is that not enough to start with?" And if I told you that I have been falling in love with you since the moment you tried to steal my horse? Jack asked quietly. Catherine's breath caught. Then I would say that I have been falling in love with you since you let me keep riding, and rode beside me instead of demanding I go back. Jack closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He cupped Catherine's face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. Are you sure about this? Your father is going to come after you. It is not going to be easy. Nothing worth having ever is, Catherine said, but yes, I am sure. Are you? Instead of answering, Jack kissed her. It was soft and careful at first, a question more than a statement. But when Catherine's hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer, the kiss deepened into something fierce and sweet and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jack rested his forehead against hers. We will do this right, he said. When we get to Denver, we will find a preacher. Make it legal and proper. I'm not giving your father any excuse to claim I took advantage of you, Catherine laughed, a sound of pure joy. All right, but Jack, this time I am choosing. This time it is real. This time it is real, Jack agreed. They reached Denver on a sunny afternoon in early July 1878. The city was bigger than Catherine had expected, bustling with people and commerce. They found her aunt's boarding house easily enough, a tidy 3-story building near the center of town. Margaret Walsh took one look at her niece in trail clothes standing next to a dusty cowboy and burst out laughing. Well, I will be damned. I heard through the grapevine that you ran away from your wedding, but I did not think you would actually make it all the way here. Aunt Margaret, Catherine said, suddenly uncertain. This is Jack Sullivan. He helped me get here safely. Margaret's sharp eyes assessed Jack, taking in his respectful posture, the way he stood just slightly protectively near Catherine. Helped you, did he? Well, you both look half-starved. Come inside, and we will sort everything out. Over a meal of real food at a real table, Catherine explained everything that had happened. Margaret listened without interrupting, though her eyebrows rose several times during the tale. So you want to marry this one instead? Margaret said when Catherine finished. You sure you are not just jumping from the frying pan into the fire? With all respect, ma'am, Jack said, I am not trying to force Catherine into anything. If she wanted to stay here with you, learn to run the boarding house, I would support that. But she has proposed a partnership, and I'm smart enough to recognize a good offer when I hear one. Margaret laughed again. I like him, Catherine. He has got a spine and a sense of humor. That will serve you well. She turned serious. But you know your father is not going to let this go. He has been sending telegrams all over the territory, offering rewards for information. I know, Catherine said, but I'm not going back. I would rather face him head-on than spend the rest of my life running. Then we will make sure you are married legal and proper before he gets here, Margaret said decisively. I know a preacher who owes me a favor, and Jack, you will stay here at the boarding house until the wedding. Everything above board and respectable. No ammunition for Morgan's lawyers. They were married 2 days later in Margaret's parlor, with the boarding house residents as witnesses. Catherine wore a simple blue dress that Margaret had helped her pick out, and Jack had gotten a haircut and borrowed a proper suit. It was nothing like the elaborate ceremony that had been planned in Santa Fe, and it was absolutely perfect. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Jack kissed Catherine like she was the most precious thing in the world. The boarding house residents cheered, and Margaret wiped tears from her eyes. I'm proud of you, Margaret whispered to Catherine afterward. Your mother would be too. She never wanted that life for you, you know. All those rules and restrictions, she wanted you to be free. Catherine had not cried during the ceremony, but she cried then, thinking of the mother she had lost when she was 12, wondering if somehow she was watching if she approved of the choice her daughter had made. They spent their wedding night in one of Margaret's rooms, and Catherine discovered that the passion she had felt when Jack kissed her by the mountain stream was only a hint of what they could share. Jack was patient and gentle, and when Catherine woke the next morning wrapped in his arms, she felt complete in a way she never had before. Their peace lasted exactly 3 more days. That was when Catherine's father arrived in Denver. Margaret came to find them in their room, her face tight with worry. Morgan is downstairs. He has got the sheriff with him claiming Jack kidnapped you. You need to come down and set the record straight. Catherine felt Jack tense beside her. "It is all right," she said quietly, taking his hand. "We knew this was coming. Let us face it together." They walked downstairs hand in hand. Charles Morgan stood in the parlor, his face red with anger. He was a big man, used to getting his way through sheer force of personality. The sheriff stood beside him, looking uncomfortable. "Catherine," her father said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage, "I do not know what this man has told you, what lies he has filled your head with, but you are coming home right now." "No," Catherine said clearly, "I am not." "The hell you are not," Charles exploded. "You are my daughter and you will do as I say. Sheriff, arrest this man for kidnapping." "Now hold on," the sheriff said. "I need to hear from the lady herself. Miss Morgan, did this man kidnap you?" "It is Mrs. Sullivan now," Catherine said, holding up her left hand to show the simple gold band Jack had placed there. "And no, my husband did not kidnap me. I asked for his help, and he gave it freely. Everything that has happened has been my choice." Her father's face went from red to purple. "You married him? You married some drifting cowboy instead of Edmund Whitmore?" "Yes," Catherine said firmly. "I married a good man who treats me with respect and kindness. I'm sorry that I embarrassed you, Father, but I am not sorry for choosing my own life." "You have no idea what you have done," Charles said, his voice shaking. "Whitmore is suing me for breach of contract. I will be a laughingstock. And for what? So you could run off with a man who has nothing to his name?" "For freedom," Catherine said. "For the chance to build something real instead of living in a gilded cage. Can you truly not understand that?" For a moment something flickered in her father's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or the ghost of some old memory. But then his face hardened again. "If you walk away from me now, you're not my daughter anymore. You will get nothing from me, no money, no inheritance. You will be dead to me." The words should have hurt, but Catherine found they barely touched her. She had already mourned the loss of her father's love, had realized years ago that to him she was only valuable as a piece in his business games. "I understand," she said quietly. "Goodbye, Father." Charles Morgan stared at her for a long moment, then turned and stormed out of the boarding house. The sheriff lingered, looking at Catherine with something like sympathy. "You sure about this, ma'am?" he asked. "More sure than I have ever been about anything," Catherine said. The sheriff nodded and left. As soon as the door closed behind him, Catherine's knees buckled. Jack caught her, holding her up. "You did it," he said softly, his lips against her hair. "You stood up to him." "We did it," Catherine corrected, clinging to him. "I could not have done any of this without you." They spent another month in Denver while Jack looked for land. He found it finally, a beautiful piece of property in a valley about 30 miles outside the city. It had good water from a creek that ran year-round, rich grass for cattle, and a small cabin that the previous owner had started but never finished. Margaret helped them buy supplies, refusing to let them pay her back. "Consider it a wedding present," she said. "And you come visit me, you hear? I want to know how you're doing." "We will," Catherine promised. "Thank you, Aunt Margaret, for everything." They moved to the ranch in August, as summer was starting to turn toward fall. The cabin needed a lot of work, but Catherine threw herself into it with enthusiasm. She learned to chink logs and mend the roof. Jack taught her to shoot so she could hunt for food and protect herself when he was working the land. They bought a small herd of cattle with the money Jack had saved, and Catherine proved to have a head for the business side of ranching. She kept meticulous books, tracking expenses and income, planning for the future. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch of their cabin and watch the sun set over the mountains, planning and dreaming. Their first winter was hard. Colorado winters were brutal, and there were times when Catherine wondered if they would make it through. But they worked together, supporting each other through the difficult times. And when spring came, when the snow melted, and the grass turned green again, Catherine felt like they had been tested and proven strong. Over the next few years, the ranch grew. They added more cattle, built a proper barn, expanded the cabin into a real house. Jack hired a few hands to help with the work, and Catherine managed the household and the books with equal skill. She heard through Margaret that her father had eventually settled the lawsuit with Edmund Whitmore, though it had cost him dearly both in money and reputation. Charles Morgan never reached out to his daughter, and Catherine found that she was content with that. She had built a new family, a chosen family, with Jack, and eventually with the children who came. Their first child was born in the spring of 1880, a healthy boy they named James. Catherine labored for 12 hours with only the local midwife and Jack by her side, and when she finally held her son, she wept with joy. Jack was a devoted father, patient and gentle with the baby, and watching him hold their son made Catherine fall in love with him all over again. 2 years later, they had a daughter, Sarah, who had Catherine's dark curls and Jack's green eyes. And 3 years after that, another son, Daniel, who was quieter than his siblings, but had a gift with animals that reminded Jack of himself as a child. Life on the ranch was not easy. There were droughts and harsh winters, sick cattle and lean times, but there was also joy. So much joy that sometimes Catherine felt her heart would burst with it. Family dinners around the big table Jack had built, teaching her children to ride and read and see the beauty in the world around them, watching Jack play with the kids, his laughter ringing out across the valley. On their 10th anniversary, Jack took Catherine up to the ridge above their house, the spot where they could see the entire valley spread out below them. The house they had built together, the barn and corrals, the cattle grazing peacefully in the summer sun. "Do you remember what you asked me that day by the stream?" Jack said, his arm around Catherine's waist. "About what I would do when we reached Denver?" "I remember," Catherine said. "I could not imagine it then," Jack said. "Could not let myself imagine a life with you because I was so afraid of taking your choice away. But Catherine, every day since then has been a gift. You are the best partner I could have ever hoped for." Catherine turned to face him, cupping his face in her hands. "You gave me my life back, Jack. You let me choose, and you stood beside me through everything that came after. I love you more now than I did the day we married." "I love you too," Jack said, "and I'm going to love you for the rest of our lives." He kissed her there on the ridge, with the sun warm on their faces and the sound of their children's laughter drifting up from the house below. It was not the life Catherine had been born to, not the life anyone had planned for her, but it was her life, built on her choices and her love, and it was absolutely perfect. Years continued to pass, each one adding new layers to their story. The children grew tall and strong, learning the ways of the ranch. James proved to have his mother's head for business and eventually took over managing the books and the buying and selling of cattle. Sarah had a gift for healing and became the person everyone in the valley called on when someone was sick or injured. Daniel, true to his childhood nature, had a way with horses that bordered on magical, and he started breeding and training stock that became famous throughout Colorado. Margaret remained a constant presence in their lives, visiting several times a year and hosting them in Denver whenever they came to town. She lived to see all 3 of Catherine's children grow to adulthood, and when she passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78, Catherine mourned her deeply but was grateful for every moment they had shared. Catherine never heard from her father again, though she learned through Margaret that he had died of a heart attack 5 years after her wedding. She felt sad for the relationship they never had, but she did not regret her choices. The life she had built with Jack was worth more than any inheritance. On a warm summer evening in 1903, 25 years after that desperate ride out of Santa Fe, Catherine and Jack sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were grandparents now, with James married and producing 2 children of his own so far. Their hair was streaked with gray, and their hands bore the calluses and scars of decades of hard work. "Do you ever think about that day?" Jack asked, his hand finding Catherine's as naturally as breathing. "When you ran up to me in your wedding dress?" "Sometimes," Catherine admitted. "I think about how terrified I was, how desperate. And then I think about how lucky I was that you were the one standing there, that you were brave enough to let me keep riding. I knew from the moment I saw you," Jack said. "There was something in your eyes, this fire that refused to be put out. I could not let that be extinguished, even if it meant riding into an uncertain future." It turned out to be a pretty good future, Catherine said with a smile, gesturing at the valley before them. The ranch had grown to over 2,000 acres with 100 head of cattle and a reputation for quality stock that brought buyers from as far away as Texas. The best, Jack agreed. He was quiet for a moment, then said, I want you to know something, Catherine. Everything I have, everything we built, it is because of you. Your courage, your determination, your partnership. I was just a drifting cowboy with a dream. You made it real. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. We made it real, together. That is what partnership means, Jack. We lifted each other up. As the sun sank below the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, Catherine thought about the girl she had been, running through the streets of Santa Fe in a wedding dress. She had been so frightened, so uncertain about what the future might hold. If she could go back and tell that girl what was waiting for her, she would say this: the path will be hard sometimes, but you will never walk it alone. You will find a partner who sees you as an equal, who celebrates your strength instead of trying to diminish it. You will build something beautiful and lasting. You will know what it means to be truly loved, and most importantly, you will be free. Jack squeezed her hand, pulling her from her thoughts. What are you thinking about? About how I borrowed your horse to escape my wedding, Catherine said with a smile. And you let me keep riding and rode beside me. Best decision I ever made. Best decision we ever made, Jack corrected, echoing her earlier words. Together. Together, Catherine agreed. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, she leaned her head against her husband's shoulder, content in the knowledge that this was exactly where she was meant to be.